I'm Tim Westerbeck, president of Eduvantis, a data-driven strategic marketing firm serving more than 100 of the world's top higher education institutions. Joe DiAngelo, dean of the Haub School of Business at St. Joseph's University in Philadelphia, joins the Business Education Revolution podcast. We'll discuss the flood of mergers and acquisitions reshaping today's higher education competitive environment. Joe is a veteran of the M&A landscape in higher education, going back decades. He's also on the front line of today's new M&A reality, having within the last year been deeply involved in several major acquisitions at his institution.
How much of what's going on in this market that we're talking about, in your opinion, is truly strategic? Strategic meaning, if we're going to acquire this party, it's because we have a very clear purpose in mind to do something that will enhance our enterprise. It isn't just, well, there's some discounted real estate here
Sure.
and some more students,
Right.
and vice versa. If I'm having financial difficulties and I'm looking for a party to acquire me, is it just to save my financial bacon, or is it, how much is strategic in
Well,
your view?
that's where you need to really be on your game, because we've had 4 or 5 schools come to us over the last several years wanting to merge, where we've said no. Because one, their programs didn't complement, the other, their financial situation was too dire, or we didn't quite need what they had, for our programs. So you've got to do your homework. It's just not like every 2 institutions can say, hey, let's just put our programs together. 25 years ago, yeah, you were looking for other campuses because that's what you needed to do to offer classes. You don't need another campus today.
It seems like the nature of an asset in higher education has changed on some level.
Absolutely.
It's not just, well, we have a beautiful campus for expansion, as you pointed out. It's just that, well, there's some more students who might, add to our portfolio
Right.
of enrollees, not really knowing necessarily whether they're the kinds of students that you would want naturally.
Sure.
As well. I mean, there's a lot of factors, I would think, that determines what is an asset worth acquiring.
Absolutely, and there's reasons why students pick certain schools, and you have to make sure that when you're merging, you're not going to turn off the students from the other school because they're not appreciative of your mission. Sometimes you want to do a merger because it's a real estate acquisition. Okay, we'll take over this program, we'll sell all their real estate, and make what we can work. They're generally not worth very much. And sometimes it's a strategic alliance for programs that you really want in your portfolio.
Now, have you yourself, through your experienced eyes, looked at some activity, mergers, acquisitions activity, and said, ugh, that was a bad idea?
If you're an undergraduate institution, primarily, and an R1 wants to merge with you, a Research 1, well, those cultures are dramatically different. And the cultures in the faculty, the cultures in your governance, the cultures in your faculty handbooks, they're completely different. That's the other thing people don't realize. And when you talk to people who've done corporate mergers, normally the financial situation you can try and take care of, but it's the cultural alignment which is the biggest issue.
Yeah, from our vantage point at Eduvantis, we're often looking at institutions and seeing how appropriate or not an acquisition or merger partner might be. And we look at all the kind of market indicators and such. Will these 2 organizations be successful,
Right.
As an entity? And oftentimes, the answer is not clear, or the answer is no.
Yeah.
But institutions still feel sometimes a need to move forward.
Yeah.
And what's up with that? I mean, what do you think they should happen?
In my previous life at a previous institution, we did 4 or 5 mergers, and one of them was to start a law school. We wanted a law school. We didn't have one. We didn't want to start one from scratch. There was a law school that was available in the geographic area, which we took over. but it was located in a terrible place. And so we needed a campus. We didn't have room on our campus. So we bought a junior college that had a very nice campus, and then moved the law school there. Now, the merger was not good for the junior college, and it wasn't really in alignment with anything that we were doing. So eventually the junior college faded away.
I would think that there's a lot of bumpy roads to be found after, even with good partners, because
Yes.
people have institutional identities. The faculty views themselves as part of one institution. Can you tell me any more stories?
Sure. Yeah, I mean,
What
look,
to avoid?
if you think that all these mergers are going to be peaches and cream, you're really, if everybody will be doing it. First of all, there's always going to be bumps in the road. There's going to be unforeseen things. But again, these cultural things with faculty are a challenge. You come from an R1 school, you may be teaching in a doctoral program. You teach one course a semester and have a bunch of doctoral students that you work with. And then you go in, you merge with a comprehensive university where people are teaching 9 course loads every year. Guess what? That's not a good fit. And you just have to make sure it doesn't overwhelm your school.
What's driving all this activity in the first place? I mean, I don't know how long ago it was, I'm making this up, 10 years ago, you wouldn't have heard much about this kind of activity. Now, everywhere you turn, you see merger, acquisition, closing. What's happening in the market at a deep level that's driving this?
Well, higher ed's in a different spot. There's fewer 18 to 22-year-olds. I mean, next year the numbers go down, and the following year in the Northeast, the 18 to 22-year-old population goes down 20%. So not everybody can survive with that. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, it's like we had to balance the budget. Well, we'll just take more students. Can't do that anymore. And some schools make a mistake that they're going to buy their class.
Is that the same truth, in your view, across all the other major markets in this country?
It depends on where you're located. It depends on your geographic area. I mean, there's some schools that have niches. They're in a very nice area. They're the only school. I'm always amazed when I go visit a school and they're the only school within 120 miles. And it's like, wow. But yeah, the schools where there are large concentrations of other colleges and universities, yeah, I think you're going to see some of that. So probably in metropolitan areas.
So for years, and myself included, people have been predicting that this was coming, that higher ed was in trouble.
Yep.
Is higher ed in trouble?
Yes. No, I'm not going to tell you it's dire. Half the schools are going out of business, but just take Philadelphia, for example. As of last year, there were 88 colleges within 25 miles of Philadelphia, from community colleges to doctoral granting institutions. Okay, now we merged with one, so now there's 87. There's not going to be 87 schools here 5 years from now, 6 years from now. There's going to be more schools that are going to go. People then make a mistake of, well, we need to have more programs. And they try to be everything to everybody. The smarter schools, and say, let's stay in our lane. Let's pick the things that we can do a really good job at. But I've worked with, 80 or 90 schools around the world. And I'm still amazed today that when I'm talking to schools and they say, well, we're going to add 3 more programs, we're going to add 4 more programs. And say, are you going to hire faculty in those? Well, we'll wait till we get the students. Well, you're accepting students to come into your program and you don't have faculty? And that's when the spiral starts going down.
Now, you yourself have been involved here at St. Joe's relatively recently as acquiring parties.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the experience you've had and how that's gone?
Sure. I mean, I'd be lying to you if I didn't tell you that there were a few bumps in the road. This was part of a strategic plan that we had. Healthcare programs are expensive. Almost all of them have professional accreditation, and so they take years to get the faculty, get the accreditation. So we were looking to acquire some schools that were already accredited. And so the University of Sciences, which was a wonderful school, had a wonderful reputation, but only had one set of programs. They were all science related. The chairman of the board of trustees said to me, "We're looking for a school with a good business program." And I said to him, "Well, that's kind of interesting. Why?" And he said, "Well, if you're going to be in healthcare today, you need to understand business." And he said, all of our students in the pharmacy school should be taking some business classes. They're not going to be pharmacists the rest of their life. All of our students going into the other healthcare areas should understand something about business or insurance. And so we're looking for a school that we can align with that has a good business school. So now we're offering certificate programs to the pharmacy students and to the students in the other healthcare areas.
Like in any, say, corporate merger acquisition, there's always an inevitable cutting of redundancy.
Yep.
And things of that nature.
Yep.
That kind of language doesn't go so well
No.
in the higher education context. And I'm just wondering how do institutions deal with that?
Poorly. But for some reason or other, people think higher ed institutions are just different than everyone else. And they can just take everyone, and you can't. You don't need 2 registrar's offices. You don't need you may need a few more people in the registrar's office, but you don't need 2. You may not need 2 sets of complements in IT. You may, so yeah, some of those things will go. You may also have faculty that can teach some of the courses in the other school. Now, if you have faculty members that are already tenured, then they're the ones that, you have to be concerned about. And so, yeah, that part is painful, but it's going to happen. Online's changing the way we do things. We started online 15 years ago. Nobody was in online in the Philadelphia area. And a lot of schools, said, we'll never get into that. And then the pandemic changed that. And so if you're not in online, you're behind the 8 ball. And when I'm talking about online, I'm just not talking about Zoom classes. That's not online. That's just classroom teaching without a classroom.
Well, and beyond the specific kinds of challenges you're talking about here with online, there's a deeper set of issues that relates, I think, to what we're talking about, which is scaled learning and much less need for facilities.
Like I say, you don't need as many classrooms. We're not a small graduate program. I mean, we're about 1,400 graduate students in 9 different graduate programs, 10 different graduate programs. I'll probably offer 10 sections in the classroom each semester. Everything else is online. Now, 15 years ago, when you wanted to take online, they had the perception the quality wasn't as good. They weren't as proficient with using a computer. So no, I want to be in the classroom. Now, it's rare to have classes in a classroom, which has created a challenge for us within the international market, because international students have to be in the classroom. They're not allowed to take online classes. And we had a large international population that got hurt a little bit in the change of political environment and the pandemic. And now we're trying to bring it back. But if you don't have a critical mass of international students, you can't run the classes. So yeah, it's changed how you operate. Absolutely.
And will it change the ability of higher education as an entity to meet the needs of the market with fewer institutions?
There's going to be fewer students, and I think schools now realize that they have to adapt. Whereas in the past they were just content with, these are the programs that we offer, this is what we do. Those that don't adapt will die. That sounds cruel, but it's true. You got to offer something that's different, value added, where there's an outcome that's measurable. So I tell students when they come here for Food Mark, they don't even know what it is, that there's 85 companies that recruit here. Because there's only 6 schools in the country that do food marketing, and there's special scholarships for food. All of a sudden there's an interest.
Any sort of closing comments or remarks about this?
I would say that, I mean, the merger and acquisition era is upon us. It's happening. And I'm not saying it's for everybody, because it's not. But if you are not at least keeping your eye open for some of those opportunities, then you're not really doing a good job of strategic planning. And you'll end up being the one that's being acquired as the one doing the acquiring.
Well, Joe, thank you for having me to your beautiful campus.
So, this is
And
fun.
I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me and
Absolutely.
share your wisdom.
Oh, it's good to talk to you.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you. Appreciate it.